She's like the female James Bond.
She's safety chick.
The safety chick.
I love that safety chick. That's
She
what
calls
it.
herself the safety chick.
I was a stalking victim, having to learn every possible aspect of personal safety to stay alive.
The safety chick. We love her.
Yeah. Welcome. I am Kathleen Gallagher, also known as the Safety Chick. And I have my trusty producer, Seth, somewhere out there. Hi, Seth. How are you today?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm good, except today's show hits really close to home. And it's going to be a gut-wrenching one, but something that absolutely needs to be talked about. For me as a parent of three boys, three grown boys now, 27, 24, and 20, my youngest is a junior at University of Michigan. And I stumbled, you know how I'm always reading different things and stumbling upon stats, and I came across this article that was like, wow. It was, according to an article in the University of Michigan News, ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft might help decrease drunk driving accidents and deaths, but they are also associated with an increase in binge drinking, according to a new study. And that's always been, that is kind of an interesting thing because kids, I mean, the one thing I will say is that, the drinking and driving has really been curbed by the miraculous and incredible work of Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all of that, and awareness starting young in the schools, whereas when I grew up, there wasn't any mention of it, and really, but my kids grew up absolutely knowing not to drink and drive. And now with Uber and Lyft, it is kind of an open thing. Let's just go out and get hammered. And, I always did, my kids played football, they were in fraternities and all of that. And I do worry and did worry about them binge drinking. And, it's as a parent, it's such a helpless feeling when your kids are in college in a way, and everybody knows what goes on there, right? But you also know about those accidents. I mean, and what can happen with binge drinking. And so I really wanted to have a show about that today and kind of talk about it with parents and, with our listeners, with our viewers, no matter how old or young you are. I mean, this is an issue, and raising the awareness about things that can happen with alcohol. I mean, we all know, crime especially, simple, accidents that were avoidable. The number one in college, the police call the first, couple weeks or months of school, they call it the red zone, because that is where, as a freshman or, just coming into that freedom, that's where the most accidents, deaths, and horrible things occur. So it really, really is vital that, I'm all about getting to these adolescents young and giving them street smarts before they have to learn about it the hard way. I mean, we've all heard, and I don't know, so I am going to read. I don't know if our viewers and listeners have heard. And I want you guys out there to know. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about some of the fraternities, the hazing where kids have died from alcohol poisoning. And so I just want to read some statistics and just cases like just recent in December, or as recent as just this last December, the on-campus death of a Grand Valley State University student last month was caused by hypothermia, and alcohol was a contributing factor, school officials said. Taylor DeRosa, an 18-year-old freshman from Royal Oak, was found dead on the morning of December 6th in an area near the intramural fields and cross-country trail on the university campus. And just as recent as January 23rd, Michael Marin died in a bathroom at the SAE fraternity chapter at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. They found him passed out in the bathroom of the fraternity, and his fraternity brothers tried to give him CPR, and he didn't make it. And so
Awful.
I could not think of a better guest to have on today than the amazing Dr. Angie Fiege, who started Rachel's First Week. Hi, Ange. And hi there. And, I'm going to try not to get emotional because honestly, this really does hit close to home. And you are amazing. And I always say that this show is about ordinary people that have had incredibly tragic things happen, doing extraordinary things from that tragedy. So why don't you tell us the story? And well, first of all, let me just say that Angie lost her daughter the first week of college I think it was like her first party. And so first, I want to talk about and ask you about, just tell us about Rachel.
Rachel, well, in many ways, she was a typical teenager. She was an honor student. She was an athlete, a student athlete. She was beautifully physical. She was beautiful physically as well as emotionally, and she had the heart to take care of underprivileged and cognitively disabled children. She wanted to go to Indiana University and be a nurse, and maybe even entertain going to medical school like her mom, like me.
Mm-hmm.
So with that background in mind, we had spent hours and hours talking about some of the risks that could occur in college. I took her with me to the infield care center at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway so that she could see firsthand some of the misbehaving that goes on associated with alcohol. We talked about drugs. I mean, I think that in terms of being prepared to enter college and knowing the risks, she was better prepared than most students were because she saw firsthand what can happen and how these tragedies can occur in college. So, but Rachel she was fun. She was happy all the time. She was a fiercely loyal friend. She was the kind of kid that you would want to have around you because she always made you happy, always made you laugh. She was really unique in that regard.
That's incredible. So take me back to that first week of school, and dropping her off at college like we all do. And
Sure. So it was kind of a stage thing. We took her belongings down early in the week of freshman orientation week, and it was so plagued hot, and there was no air conditioning in the dorm, so brought her back home for a couple of days. And then I ended up dropping her off on a Wednesday. And we kind of walked her classes. She knew exactly where she was going to go. She was a pretty organized kid, so she had her had it mapped out as to where she was going to go to class and what she needed for which class. We got all of her books together. Gave her a big kiss on Wednesday afternoon and said, "I'll come to you soon." The next day, her dad went down and kind of set up her bank account. And so as far as we as her parents were concerned, she was ready to go. She met up with some friends from her high school on that Thursday night and then went to a party that was hosted by friends from high school, upperclassmen. So these were all kids that she knew. And there was drinking going on. I would say that Rachel probably wasn't binge drinking, but she was drinking. I certainly know that. She was walking from an upstairs level to the basement of this party house and slipped on a flight of stairs and hit her head on the floor.
oh,
I'm not really sure what happened after that. I don't think she was knocked out. I think she was pretty dazed, though. And so some of the people at the party went and took her upstairs and had her lay down on a sofa that was there. And
was
just
this
went on about.
was this a fraternity or was this?
No, this was an off-campus house. So at any rate, they kind of looked at her a couple times during the night and went on with their partying. And some of the kids were planning to stay there anyway at the house because they had their counseling appointments, and it was very close to the counseling office. At any rate, about 7 a.m, they went in to check on her, and she was blue and lifeless and wouldn't wake up. So they called EMS, and by the time the medics got there, she was in cardiac arrest. They worked feverishly to resuscitate her and actually did get a heartbeat back, took her to the local hospital there. And while she was at that hospital, she continued to have periods of cardiac arrest for the next hour before they finally got her heart to sustain a heartbeat and blood pressure. And about that time, they called me. And it was probably the most difficult call I've ever had in my life. I mean, I still get chills thinking about it. I just gotten off my shift in the critical care unit at Methodist. And a nurse called me and said, Dr. Fiege, we have your daughter here, Rachel. And I said, is she conscious? I don't know what made me think the worst, but I did. And she said, no. And I said, well, is she on a ventilator? And I mean, I just cut right to the chase. And I demanded to speak to the doctor there. And that's kind of where they told me the story. So I immediately got in my car and drove to Bloomington. Along the way, I called my husband and told him the tragic news as well. And he drove down with our son, and we all met down there. And when I went into Rachel's room and looked at her, she looked beautiful. I mean, she had her makeup on. There wasn't a mark on her. So I lifted up her eyelids, to look at her pupils, and they were fixed and dilated, which to me was an indication of a very, very serious problem going on with her brain, whether it be from the cardiac arrest or from the fall. And then what proceeded from there was a series of tests and finally determination of brain death. So then we went on to donation, and Rachel donated several organs. That's kind of where that 24 hours led us.
So sorry that there are no words. There are no words for this other than what a tragedy. What an absolute tragedy. But
it was. I mean, the tragedy is, multifold. First of all, I would have never expected Rachel to ever end up in that situation. She would be the kind that would be taking care of the kid that fell down the stairs. But I think because of the way things happened, it became very apparent to me that her death was not because the students there willfully and wanted, were trying to protect their own hide by not calling EMS early. They weren't worried that they were going to get arrested for underage drinking, because that clearly what was going on at that party. But I think they just didn't know. They just didn't realize the magnitude of what was going on, and a head injury, particularly in the background of alcohol use. And, perhaps a lot of the students that were there at that party were heavily intoxicated. I don't know. But clearly they made the wrong choice in what to do. And that's kind of was the driving force behind the development of Rachel's First Week.
And that's exactly, as I earlier said, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And from PTSD, I mean, the trauma that your family endured, to take that energy and again, turn that negative into the positive. I mean, that's what this is all about. And so tell us about Rachel's First Week, and tell me actually the story that when we talked earlier about the girls in the ER, how
this all started.
Yes.
So, like I said, I really felt strongly, despite a lot of media attention and a lot of coaching me to say that the kids at the party were at fault and that they should be prosecuted. I refused to do that. I mean, I really felt that they just didn't know, and what would be more beneficial would be to have an educational program to teach students to how to recognize kids that are in trouble, and also what to do when those things happen. So essentially, Rachel's First Week started the February after Rachel's death, which was in August. And what we did was, you took her high school senior class and divided it up into small groups. And I had one of Rachel's friends, along with an emergency medicine resident, kind of proctor this discussion among the senior class, which would have been juniors when Rach was a senior. So now, being seniors, we were having this discussion, and it worked out well. I mean, I think the kids that knew Rachel better were more impacted by this way of education, but it really wasn't feasible, first of all, to continue this and do it on a large scale. So we decided to go to convocation style presentations of Rachel's First Week, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But essentially, the program initially, when it started, was to bring a group of seniors together toward the end of their senior year, because that's the period of time when they're most, I think, receptive to realizing that something about to change drastically. They're about to experience independence and freedom that they've never had before. Right. So when we developed the program, the convocation style program, we kind of started out with this party style music as kids held into a convocation center. After that, we cut to a video that kind of chronicled Rachel's life into a Beyonce song, which is a very sobering song. After that, we kind of went into our core content of what we wanted the kids to learn. And then we had a question and answer set. So I think what made the convocation program work and interactive was throughout our discussion, we had polling questions, and we encouraged the kids to bring their cell phones and join into the polling. They could free text questions. So it was very interactive from that standpoint. The other thing that we wanted to do was make sure it was youthful and relevant, because there's no point in those of us with gray hair and no hair going up there preaching to kids. It had to be students.
Very true.
Were,
I run across that too. Exactly.
You suddenly become very stupid about that age, at least.
Yeah.
So you're our student. But anyway, so we had emergency medicine residents who were very young themselves, but still, professionals that could educate them about these topics that we thought were relevant. And then we had some of Rachel's friends that served as a panel. So we would take a concept, the emergency medicine resident would elaborate on it, then turn it over to the panel and say, what have you encountered that is, that kind of highlights this concept? So the concepts that we had were derived from CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And this is a survey that's put out annually. And what they do is they look at 121 different behaviors that kind of get young adults and students in this college age into trouble. It contributes to their morbidity and mortality. And these topics, or 6 of them, included unintentional injuries, lack of physical activity, alcohol and drugs, sexual behaviors, and unhealthy diets. And from those 6 behaviors, we selected the 3 that we thought were most relevant in college when kids first went into college: intentional injury, alcohol and drugs, and sexual behavior. So when we actually did our program, we had case studies, we had content that related to those things. So we kind of initially focused Rachel's first week program on high schoolers and really high school seniors.
And in Indiana, in and around.
Yes, in Indiana, local. Yeah.
Got it.
So as I mentioned, I'm a physician. I'm going into work one day, and I always go through the emergency room on my way up to the critical care units, because when I see what's in the emergency room, I know what my night's going to be like. And
gosh.
I walk in, and there's 3 ambulances bringing in 3 drunk girls, and they're boohooing like drunk girls do.
Right.
They're all dressed up. I mean, they have formals on, they got their hair done, they got the makeup on, they got all the things. And there's one girl that's with them that was sober. And so it turns out that these 3 girls were at a dance or formal for a sorority at a local college here. And they had one sober sorority sister kind of monitoring things. And God bless them for mandating that there be sober sorority sisters kind of monitoring activities. But at any rate, these girls had drunk too much, and they were all emotional. One was actually having an asthma attack. And I thought, Lordy, these are people I need to be talking to. So I got a paper towel out of the dispenser and wrote my phone number down and gave it to the sober sorority sister and said, hey, I'm going to come talk to your sorority. And I really never, ever from them. So 2 days later, though, I got a phone call from the sorority, and they said, hey, we want you to come and talk to our girls. So, I mean, I did. We got our posse together. We went to the sororities. It was a much smaller venue. It was like the dining hall of the sorority. And the ambiance was completely different, because sororities tend to want to support each other. The girls want to support each other. And the concept of sisterhood and looking out for each other was already part of their culture. So we did our program, and I swear to God, it was like a religious experience. It was like, this is where we need to be, because the high school seniors understand cognitively what they're about to face when they enter college.
Right.
But the college kids, after being in college for a week or 2, get it. They understand the amount of alcohol that is present, the recreational drugs that are present, how easy it is to get taken advantage of sexually. They're starting to
I don't mean to
understand mental
interrupt,
health.
but so that is the thing is, the adolescent high school students haven't left the nest yet, right? So it's so right what you said about once you're in college for a little bit and you're starting to see what is going on around you, it's really, you're starting to get that street smart. So I think it's fantastic. You're right on with your demographic, getting in there when kids are starting to see around them exactly what can go on. So it's fantastic. So where is Rachel's first week now? What are you guys doing? I know you've grown it exponentially. Tell me.
Sure. So, COVID has really changed the complexion of how we go about presenting our data now, our presentation. So, at least in Indiana, most of the schools are virtual. There's no in-person type of teaching. So, even having, our convocation has been actually limited. So, we decided to start a podcast, and the podcast will start out with Rachel's story as told through the eyes of her friends. So interestingly, when
That's
Rach
great.
died, I recorded all of her friends, back at the point in time that it was very, very fresh. And to hear their point of view and their recommendations to students as they begin college after having to go through the tragedy that they endured is just gut wrenching. I mean, it really is. And seeing
And
for students
so
to see,
powerful
right,
because it's your peers talking to you.
right. They're seeing
Yeah.
it through the eyes of people that actually lived it.
Yep.
And then from there, what we're trying to do is capitalize on issues that are relevant to the college experience. So, we talk about the Indiana Lifeline Law, which is really relevant to many states. It's a medical amnesty law, meaning that if you call on behalf of a student, whether you know them or not, and stay with them in order to get them assistance because of intoxication, drug use, rape, whatever, if you are intoxicated yourself, are absolved from legal prosecution.
And that's a law right now in Indiana, correct?
Right. And most states have medical amnesty laws that are very similar to the Indiana Lifeline Law. And I would encourage every student and every parent to check with their legislators to see if such a law exists. And if not, work actively to enact one in their state. It's an absolute lifesaver. When kids don't think they're going to get in trouble, they will be more proactive about getting help for either a fellow classmate or somebody they don't know.
And like I started off with, we see that story so many times, the fraternity hazing, leaving because they don't want to get in trouble. I mean, that is the key. It's not about getting in trouble. It's about saving someone's life. So
saving a life, right.
Let me ask you, because, you're amazing and you did everything right. Things still happen, obviously, but in your heart, what do you feel is the most important thing a parent can do to educate or instill in their children, things like this can happen, and sooner rather than later?
Sure. So I think when you look overall at parenting nowadays, we tend to be a little more hovering, if you will. We don't let kids experience, hard knocks as they're growing up and under your supervision as a parent. I absolutely was guilty of that. I was much too involved in some of the tragedies that my kids have faced and not let them work them out themselves. I always wanted to help because it hurts to watch your children struggle. So
Right.
I think as being a parent, you need to hold on loosely, but not too hard. Be there to guide them and kind of work out these problems themselves. Cognitively, it is beat into them through the high school system that they shouldn't drink, they shouldn't do recreational drugs, they need to watch their back when they're at parties, they need to take care of each other, those type of things. But, they're kids. I mean, this is a time for exploration and
their first, time out of the nest. But as we know, common sense is a lost art that bears repeating again and again and again. So your organization is a way to, really the way you do it with medical, with, all the different people and ages that you use to get the messaging is phenomenal. So we will have all of rachelsfirstweek.org information up on our website. Your podcast, what's the podcast called?
Safe tea, because we always talk about spilling the tea. So this is safe tea.
I love
kind of a
that.
play on
T-E-A, like drinking tea.
Yeah.
I
Safe Tea
love
by
that.
Rachel's First Week. You can find it on any of the popular podcast platforms. And it doesn't just deal with drugs and alcohol. We try to focus on the total college experience. So we have our episodes on human trafficking, something that most college kids don't think that they can become a victim of, but they certainly can. We have one on organ donation. We have one on the Indiana Lifeline Law, like I mentioned. We have one on mental health and COVID. And we're getting ready to record a podcast on eating disorders, things that plague freshman girls. So it's not just alcohol; it's the whole.
No, it's
composite
everything.
of being
And you, I mean, you are so multifaceted with not only your own personal story, but you're one heck of a doctor as well, and you've seen a lot of things. So I think what you do is incredible, and I thank you so much for joining me today and sharing that incredible story and Rachel's life with us. And I hope to have you back soon.
Well, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing as well. I mean, if we don't get the word out there, all of our children are subject to worse things happening than you can imagine. So we just got to keep staying the course.
Stay the course.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much, Angie. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
Seth, it's just those simple twists of fate. And you hope that, what we do here is just raising awareness and trying to show ordinary people doing extraordinary things from incredible tragedy. So what I want to do, though, as you know, that we always do is read the Safety Chick rules. And these are just, the basic just kind of signs and things that if you are a student, I don't care if you're an adult. I mean, a lot of adults don't even, really getting intoxicated and leaving people behind and not really seeing the signs. So these are the signs of what to do if someone is intoxicated and what you can do as a bystander to get them help. So you want to know all the danger signals of someone who has overdosed. You do not wait for all the symptoms to be present. So if you're with someone and they are, you can tell that they are extremely intoxicated. They're not passed out yet. Maybe they haven't, maybe they're just getting sick or they're just acting, out of it. Pay attention to that. And step in. Also, be aware that a person that has passed out may die. You don't want to ever leave anybody that is unconscious. I mean, that is the number one thing. If someone passes out, you call 911 immediately. If they're vomiting, don't just let them lay there and don't, as the old saying is, hold back her hair. It's not just that. It's lay them on their side and stay with them until medical help arrives. And the last is if there's any suspicion of an alcohol overdose, like I just said, call 911. Don't be afraid to call 911. Don't try to guess the degree of intoxication. Just do it because it could be the difference between life and death. So, until next time, thanks.
She's like the female James Bond.
She's safety chick.
The safety chick.
I love that safety chick. That's
She
what
calls
I
herself the safety chick.
I was a stalking victim, having to learn every possible aspect of personal safety to stay alive.
The safety chick. We love her.
Yeah.